Hello, and welcome back to ADHD Support Talk Radio. ADHD Support Talk is brought to you by addclasses.com. Visit www.addclasses.com and sign up for helpful online events and resources today. I'm your co-host, Lynne Edris, and I am a productivity and ADHD coach. So my job is not to help my clients just cross more stuff off some list every day. It's about helping them get the right things done more easily and perform at the level of their abilities more consistently so that they have the freedom they want with more time, energy, and bandwidth for what matters most to them. I am a woman with ADHD myself, guys, so I have been where so many of my clients are, and I've come out the other side, so to speak. I've gone from living in a constant state of chaos and underperformance to a life of more success and fulfillment than I once thought was possible for me. And I believe that every single one of us can learn to have our own version of success, whatever that is. You can learn more about me, what I do, and the programs and services I offer at www.coachingadvantages.com. Today, I want to talk with you about the disconnect so many of my clients have between what they think is their problem with prioritization and what the actual problem often is. Many of the people who come to me for help talk about trouble with prioritization and getting the right things done and moving those important things forward consistently. And those are common complaints. I get it. But as I often say, in order to be effective, the solution must address the root problem. And for many of my clients, there's a bigger problem underneath their struggles with prioritization that we really need to start to address before we can focus on helping them, learn how to decide what to do and when to do it, which is essentially what prioritization is. But here's the gist. The real underlying problem for most of my clients isn't actually about prioritization. Each of us has a finite pool of time, energy, and focus or bandwidth. I often say that those are your three most precious resources, and my job is to help my clients use those three precious resources in the most efficient and effective ways so that they have more of them left over for the things that matter most, the things that bring meaning to their lives. And one of the things I've learned from working with thousands of professionals over the years who are just like me is that most of us have this underlying perception that those resources, time, energy, and focus, are much more like stretchy and elastic than they really are. So what I do is really helping my clients learn effective resource allocation, right? But the truth is, you need to learn the limits of those resources for you. Right? Again, you have a very finite amount, a very finite pool of time, energy, and focus available to allocate to anything, right? Sure, you can learn to use those resources more efficiently, but you still have a hard finite limit to those resources. Many of my clients have quite a bit of work to do on knowing and accepting those limits before we can get them to really effectively manage their time, energy, and focus. I often say that you can't really manage something you're not very aware of. So I want you to think about this. Every single thing you agree to do or take on or pay attention to, every single thing that you take on makes less time, energy, and bandwidth available for something else. Okay, so every single thing you agree to allocate time, energy, or focus to is taking those things away from something you're already committed to. So every single time you say yes to something, you are actually saying no to something else. And until you're doing that consciously, intentionally, and deliberately, no matter how well you're trying to be efficient with your time, no matter how well you're trying to manage your time, you're constantly robbing Peter to pay Paul, so to speak, all day long, week after week, month after month, and year after year. You can't create more time, you can't create more energy, and you can't create more focus. Yes, there are plenty of things you can do to moderate your energy and focus levels and use them more efficiently and effectively, but you can't create more. Okay, so I want you to really think about this. Every single time you allocate, you decide to give your time, your energy, or focus to something, you're literally taking it away from something else. And for most of us, it's the stuff that's for us that suffers, right? Taking care of ourselves physically, emotionally, spiritually, those are the things that often come last. Doing things that move you toward your dreams and progress toward the life you want for yourself usually suffers first, okay? Nurturing and feeding the relationships that are most important to us will be short-shrifted as well. That often comes second. So the people closest to us often bear the brunt after we do. Again, here's the deal, right? Most of my clients with busy brains like mine, most of us who have ADHD tendencies like I do, also have a natural tendency to take on more than is realistic. And we are constantly overcommitted, and we're spreading those three resources of time, energy, and bandwidth way too thin. Personally, it seems to be a lesson that I continue to learn in some surprising ways myself, kind of over and over again. It's one of those things that I'll think I have down pat until I realize it's shown up in like a new unexpected way, right? And I'll talk more about that a little bit later, but it took me a long time to figure out, but the better I got a handle on my own time and productivity with the right systems and tools set up to support me, the easier it was for me to recognize when I was feeling that old familiar urge to take on something that, you know, just might be the thing that tips the scales from manageable to overload in my commitments. And for me to be able to make choices that are in line with what's really most important to me. And many of you guys know that urge I'm talking about really well, right? I sometimes call it my ADD optimism. You know, we see the potential, we see the possibilities in something, and we get swept up really quickly in our own energy and our excitement and our enthusiasm that we don't really realize that the urge is about to get us into trouble again. Okay. It shows up in differently in each of us, but for me it's something like, ooh, this could be awesome. I can see the possibilities, I'm all in. Or I could totally rock this, I could do this, and then I could do that, and I could really, you know, make it really great. I could knock it out of the park by then doing this, and this is right up my alley. And you know, this will be a great way for me to serve more people or solve a problem or create something really fun or make a difference in the world or learn something new. Many of you guys know what I'm talking about. I wish I could see your faces because I'm pretty sure this is resonating with most of you and sounds really familiar, right? For me, it's like it's a gut visceral feeling, and it's almost intoxicating in the moment. It's almost like a buzz. It's a buzz of energy and a buzz of optimism and enthusiasm and hopefulness that can be a really wonderful feeling, right? That general visceral gut level excitement and energy and optimism really is a wonderful thing when we are managing it. Okay. That jolt we get when we can see the potential in something and we make connections that others maybe can't or don't see. And that almost, visceral sort of almost, what's the word I'm looking for? Effervescent kind of enthusiasm and optimism we feel in the moment to do whatever that thing is and bring it to its ultimate incredible potential is wonderful. But it really does get us in trouble if we don't know how to manage it. Okay. Again, don't get me wrong, that energy, that optimism, that natural curiosity, that desire to learn, that desire to do new things, they are great qualities on their own. Okay, that's what makes us interested in and good at so very many different things, right? That's what gives us our great out of the box ideas and our really innovative ways of doing things that are the stuff of ingenuity. Really, they can be awesome. But those same qualities can actually destroy our quality of life, get in the way of our fulfillment, and eventually erode our faith in ourselves if we're not in control and if we're not intentional about them. So those same qualities left unmanaged are what's behind. They're at the root cause of our overworking and our overwhelm and our stress and all of those unfinished projects. And that's what leads a lot of us to feeling like we are never quite living up to our potential and what we know is possible. So until we recognize those urges, those feelings, and we get a handle on managing what we already have on our plates, and we can learn to pause and see how whatever it is we're considering jumping into impacts all of that, we're destined to find ourselves in the same position over and over again. Overcommitted, overstretched, overwhelmed, stressed, and unfulfilled, okay? But I know I'm painting like a gloomy, sort of a gloom and doom kind of picture here, but I want to make sure that you guys know that if that's you, it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to stay that way. Okay. It really starts with changing your thinking about those three precious resources, those things that are your time, your energy, and your focus. And then learning to recognize that urge, that optimistic impulse for what it is, so that you can make choices that are in line with the life you want for yourself and that you'll be happy with and make you feel fulfilled, right? So once you get a handle on your commitments, your time and your to-dos, the practical stuff that is the time management systems, tools, and strategies that I teach my clients, once you get those things, once you have a handle on those things and you can start to learn to recognize your own urge to jump in, then you're in a position to choose how you will allocate those precious resources of time, energy, and focus. It really is that simple, okay? But you guys know, right? I always say simple isn't always easy. So I want to give you some practical strategies, some sort of steps you can take to start to do today to move away from that overwhelm, overworking, and overcommitment so that you're moving more toward the life you want for yourself. So I want you to do 5 things, and altogether, they may take a max of a few seconds, okay? So the 5 things are notice, pause, acknowledge, analyze, and ask, okay? So first I want you to notice. Pay attention to that urge to say yes. Notice or remember what it feels like when you feel that internal pressure, that urge to say yes, that urge to take something on or start something, and start to get curious about it, right? What are you feeling in your gut? What are you feeling in your body? What are the kinds of things you think? What are the thoughts that come to your mind? What do you hear yourself saying or thinking? What do you notice yourself doing? Do you get amped up? I sometimes feel like somebody's like wound those toys that are kind of spring wound. They have the little lever in the back that you wind up. I feel sometimes like somebody's wound that spring up real tight, and I have like this internal tension. It's not an uncomfortable tension, but I have this internal tension that I feel like needs to be released. It's a really gut level sort of excitement. So first, I want you to notice that urge. That's number 1. Number 2 is pause. So next I want you to pause. Once you've noticed the urge, you need to pause. And that is not natural for most of us. So it will take some practice, right? But once you've noticed, what it feels like when you want to say yes, you want to take something on, I want you to just stop for a few seconds and take some breaths. Literally, okay? It can really help to intentionally take a breath or two, a deep diaphragmatic breath that can slow down the rush, slow down my brain just enough to help me think rather than react. It's that reacting that gets us overcommitted and in trouble. So you want to notice, and then you want to pause and just take a breath. And while you've paused for just a second, I want you to acknowledge what you're feeling. Okay. When you notice those feelings, those signs, that urge to jump in, take just a second to acknowledge those feelings consciously. Simply, you can say it out loud if you're alone, so people don't think you're bonkers, or think it consciously. There's that feeling. There's that excitement. That's it. That's all you have to do. Right? Don't ignore it. Okay. Don't tell yourself you shouldn't feel that feeling. There's nothing at all wrong with that feeling or the urge itself, right? It's a wonderful thing, again, when it's harnessed well. The problem is not about the feeling. It's about what you do as a result of that feeling. Okay. So you want to pause. I'm sorry. First you notice, then you pause, then you acknowledge. And then, once you've acknowledged, I want you to to analyze, right? Now that you've you've noticed, you've paused, you've acknowledged, you're in a better position to engage your logic and reasoning part of your brain and make some choices. Okay. So now is when you can analyze. Now is when you can look at, how much time and energy and focus is this new possible commitment going to take? And from where am I going to pull those resources, right? So you're looking at, about how much time, energy, and focus you need, and that you need to commit to this new thing so that you can do it in the way you want to do it. And also from what other commitment you will take those resources. And if you can be honest with yourself and admit that you don't really know what and how much you're going to potentially be committing, that's an opportunity to hold that pause button down, right? That's an opportunity to give yourself some space and time to figure that part out, right? So that's where finding a comfortable way for you to say to yourself or to someone else, let me take a better look at what I have on my plate before I commit to this, and I'll get back to you. That can be really empowering, right? Finding a way to say, hang on and let me think about this and I'll get back to you, so that you can really analyze it and make sure you're really clued in to what you're about to take on as well as you can be, so that you can make those conscious, intentional choices, is really important and really empowering. Okay. So once you notice, pause, acknowledge, and analyze, then the final step is to ask. I want you to ask yourself, what will I choose to let go to make room for this thing? I'm going to say that again, because this is really important. And eventually you kind of go right to, okay, I'm noticing this urge, and asking the question. The question again is, what will I choose to let go in order to make room for this? Here's the deal, guys. If you don't ask yourself that question, if you don't make that choice intentionally, consciously, and proactively, you're left in reactive mode, literally stealing time, energy, and bandwidth from yourself, from the people you love, and from your quality of life. And that's probably what you've been doing for years if you're still listening to me now. So keep in mind that just because you've already committed to something, right, whether you've committed to yourself or committed to someone else, that doesn't mean that you're stuck with it. So if the new thing is something that you really want to explore, you really want to take on after you've paused and analyzed it, then you can take a look at, how am I going to change how I'm committed to whatever's already on my plate, right? It doesn't, again, just because you're committed to something doesn't mean you're stuck with it for life, or at least in the same way and at the same level. Okay. So that, again, that question is really important. What will I choose to let go to make room for this? Okay. This isn't one of those like sort of once and done kind of things you learn to do, or once and done kind of changes that you make. It's not like quitting something cold turkey. This is a natural tendency that probably became a way of thinking and behaving for you over the course of a lot of years. And that's not something that goes away all at once or, in one fell swoop. So I often say these kinds of things can be a bit like that whack-a-mole game at the carnival. You might think you have it handled, but then it'll come out sideways sort of somewhere else. No matter how good I've become at pausing and analyzing what's on my plate and saying no or not yet to the things that come my way when I feel that sort of urge, once in a while, I will still find myself, suddenly, and I'm going to say suddenly, I'm going to use my quotey fingers. I'm going to put suddenly in quotes because it feels like I'm suddenly finding myself out of balance. But the truth is, it's usually almost always sort of a gradual slide that gets me there these days, right? But I suddenly realize that I'm out of whack. Okay. I worked hard for quite a few years on learning how to hit my own pause button and tell others, let me look at my commitments and get back to you when I would have that urge to volunteer or commit to something. And once I got my own time under control, once I got my systems in place for, all of that sort of practical stuff, task management and planning and calendar management and all of that sort of time management stuff, and I got my head right about sort of this resource allocation piece, it became pretty easy for me to say, let me look at my commitments and get back to you, and to say no or not now, or I'm going to I'm interested in pursuing this, but in a different way. Okay. That became a much easier thing for me to do. But like I said, it shows up other ways sometimes. For me, it's a little harder for me to say, let me take a look at what's on my plate and make a really good analytical decision before I commit to myself to take on something myself, especially when it's something that's related to my business and something that I know is going to really help my tribe. Okay. So anytime I notice that I'm not taking good care of myself, anytime I notice that I'm feeling like I'm squeezing in, doing the things that restore me and the things that I love with the people I love, I know that I need to hit the pause button and reevaluate what I have going on. And honestly, like I found myself there again recently after all these years. So I had to hit my own pause button and answer those all important, like reorienting questions for myself again. Where am I spending my time and my energy and my bandwidth? And, what do I need to say no to so that I can say yes to the things that really matter to me? Right? Sometimes that means making hard choices or eliminating commitments or redefining commitments. And, that was something I had to do again just a few weeks ago myself when I decided to make some changes in my business offerings. It's hard, but after I do it, I always feel a sense of relief. And once I make my head sort of right with it, I feel a sense of calm that lets me know I'm moving in the right direction. So every now and then we need to reevaluate where we're spending those resources of time and energy and focus. So I want you to think about it. What about you? Where do you need to say no in order to say yes to what really matters to you? Share your thoughts as comments on this episode or join us in the ADHD Support Talk Facebook community to connect and let us know what you're taking away from this episode, what resonates with you and what works for you, and how you have learned to say no in order to say yes to the things that really matter to you. I hope you found this helpful. As always, I appreciate your time and your attention. And again, I'm Lynne Edris. And if you need help really getting a handle on what's actually on your plate already so that you can make those important decisions and make the most of your time, energy, and focus, please visit my website to see how I can help you. It's www.coachingadvantages.com. Again, thanks again for your time and your attention, and we'll catch you next time on ADHD Support Talk.